Coming up, Brooklyn's back, baby. A big-time win at home on the back-to-back over the Memphis Grizzlies. Dennis Schroeder is flat out too good for the NBA. We break it all down coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Marbeck. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We are 100% free on all those great platforms, and let you know that you can keep winning big all season long with FanDuel. New customers can place just a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. And Doug, The rebuild is in full effect, minus the part where the Brooklyn Nets are just a really good, fun, exciting basketball team to watch, beating the Memphis Grizzlies last night, as we say, on the back-to-back, getting a dub, 11.5-point underdogs. How dare you lay the money?
That's the problem. Can't be a tanking team when your team's actually good. This might be the problem the Nets are going to run to. Look, everyone that's listened to this podcast knows I never wavered. I always said the tank was going to be tough. We've always said that this team was just simply too good. Go look it up. Go listen to. Do me a favor. Help the numbers. Go listen to every podcast we did over the summer. You'll see. We said this. Now look, no, never saw this coming. We were on. I mean, I personally, I speak for myself here, was on the train of like they're going to have an impossible time scoring. The offense is going to be a disaster. It's going to be no problem tanking. Through 5 games right now, that looks incorrect, at least for now. And with the win over the Grizzlies, they could have easily beat the Nuggets. Not easily. They could have beat the Nuggets. They could beat 3-2. They have the 5th best point differential in the East right now. 5th best. Like they're outscoring their opponents on the season. This is simply not what's supposed to happen with tanking teams, and I'm here for it. Guys like Schroeder's playing awesome. Zaire Williams playing great. It kind of hasn't mattered who's been in, who's been out. They just put up a solid effort every single night, and they beat the Grizzlies easily last night. And I don't know if you're thinking, if you got your sights set on Cooper Flag, you do not want a team that beats other NBA teams kind of easily on the second half of the back-to-back when they got to their hotel at 3 a.m.
It is funny because I was talking about this when we're thinking about these projections and we're doing, host pick'ems every single game. And we come to these spreads, as I say, 11.5, plus 11.5 for the Brooklyn Nets. You and I both said, oh, come on now. The team's been playing too well to start this season. And at the same time, we didn't sit here and say because we're bullish on the Nets winning games outright. Even coming off of the Denver game, we take them down to the wire. And if you have a player like Dorian Finney-Smith play to his percentages from beyond the arc, that team wins that game. And all of a sudden, by the way, we'd be sitting here having a conversation about a 3-2 basketball team in Brooklyn and what that would mean. At a very high level, before we get into Dennis Schroeder has been absolutely phenomenal to start the season. There's no two ways about it. And he's played the best basketball of his career, as far as I can tell, right? And he's doing it in a lead role. He's doing it in a role where the team needs him to perform at the level that he is to this point. I will just say, they may have to fire Jordy Fernandez. There's a real problem here if you're going to have a head coach that is just fundamentally sound, has the team fully bought into what he wants to do, everybody understands their role, and they're there committed every single possession, even sometimes making mistakes, but they are dialed in every single game. Jordi Fernandez is a real problem for this franchise. I don't know any other way to slice it.
They got a new offensive system, and last year, if you remember watching, it was basically a dueling banjo of Cam Thomas would get the ball and try to beat his guy and take a rough shot. And then Mikal Bridges would try to beat his guy, usually like a bigger wing, and just get stopped in the lane. And that would kind of be the end. And they take some mid-range jumper, or Bridges would miss a layup, or like that was kind of what they did. They couldn't unlock anything with the bigs. The shooting was just going to be what it was on a night-to-night basis. And there was like no real fundamental tenets. If you watch what they're doing this season, I mean, even just like not getting all the way film bro-y, which we're really not as a podcast, right? Like, go like, look at what Lucas Kaplan and guys like that are doing when they're breaking down film. But on a high level, it's so clear what they're running. They're running like when Schroeder has the ball, it's pick and roll, and he's unlocking the bigs. It's getting Cam into motion off the ball. Like, so like not just handing him the ball, getting him moving when he's already moving when he gets the ball. And he's able to dissect if he's like, hey, can I just take my guy here? Did I get the right switch? Do I need to get it back to Schroeder so he can take his guy? Are we just going to run high pick and roll with one of these bigs? Because Schroeder's a really good lob threat to guys like, Ziaire last night, Noah Clowney, Claxton. They have guys that can do this with constant motion around the shooters to locate and then relocate so that they can try to lose their guys, right? Sometimes you see it like through like little pistol action. Some like they ran double drag a couple times with even a small guy, like as the first screener. They're just doing lots of different things. And you can see it on the offensive end. Like you just watch the games. It just looks like they're moving more, right?
Yeah.
That's the low level analysis. It's everyone's moving, no one's standing and watching. If you don't have a shot, relocate. If you don't have a shot too, set a screen. And let's get everyone moving. And when you get the ball, you're already in motion. And that is just starts to tax the defense a while. And it's how you make up for having like sort of less offensive firepower.
Yeah, lack of stagnation, right? Last year, you talk about it all the time. The guys, the spot up shooters, which include players like Cam Johnson. These aren't knocks on them. It's what their roles are. It's what they're designed to be. It's one of the reasons why a player like Dorian Finney-Smith is, I think, having some struggles, maybe adjusting a little bit to how this new system functions for him. You need athleticism. We're going to talk about Zaire Williams a little bit later. But Jordy Fernandez has this team understanding what the best function is, and not to very briefly drag a player like Mikal Bridges, but the fact that he was not capable of attacking the paint and taking guys off the dribble and creating some of that defensive pressure that then opens up the opportunities off of those plays, let alone if the right screens are being set and the right actions are being run. But the bottom line was it was always a mountain to climb there for Mikal Bridges. And in another world, I'd be very curious. What would Mikal Bridges look like under Jordy? Because I think he would just get it better about how to unlock a player like that opposed to previous regimes.
The hook some, like they also weren't doing anything to help him, right? Like, so like if we're gonna let Bridges off the hook here, it was so obvious in a game-to-game basis, like, oh, Aaron Naismith is guarding you. Maybe we shouldn't try you beating him one-on-one off the dribble into the mid-range, right? Where it's just gonna be, oh, we're playing Orlando and they can just switch any one of these monster big wings onto you. Maybe we should try something different, right? Yeah. So they just never could do that. They never, like, either Vaughn was either unable or incapable of instituting it. The team, the energy level was just lower anyway. Ollie came in late, so it's like hard to let him off the hook a little bit. But I'll let Bridges off the hook here. They weren't doing anything to unlock any part of this offense. And here, now, when Schroeder's a huge part of this, right? Having a point guard who understands how to quickly dissect the defense and punish you if you kind of make a little bit of a mistake, right? Like dig a little too hard, come up too high in the screen, right? Like whatever it is that he is able to do in the moment, it's like, oh, you came to the level of the screen. Well, now I'm getting downhill, right? Like, so, and now we're going to get to the basket. Oh, you sag back a little too far in drop or whatever. Oh, now you're getting a lob over your head to one of these guys. And so it's because you're too much on your back heel. And it just, there's a reason why some of this stuff is happening. And you really do, I will I'll let these guys off the hook a little bit too. You kind of do need a guy like this who's been in the league for 10 years and understand, has seen it all and has run every different system to be able to do that stuff. You can't just like open some guy out of the box and have them do it. So they are helped by the fact that there's immense trust in him, Schroeder that is, and that he's able to do these things. I call it unlocking the bigs, because in basketball, if you can't run pick and roll, like just good luck. Good luck. Like I don't like that's it's one of the basics, and they just haven't been able to do that, and now they can.
And whether it's a year ago, forcing maybe to try to want Cam Thomas to be in that role, still a young player, hasn't been around the league for 10 years, or Ben Simmons even pre-injury. Well, guess what? If you're not a guy that attacks, if you're not a guy that shoots, then it doesn't matter how form or function you can be in some of these set pieces. Coming up in a second, Dennis Schroeder. Is he a real problem for the Brooklyn Nets tank? And how high could his price point skyrocket if the Nets start fielding offers before the deadline? Let's get into the philosophical concerns here coming up in just one moment.
Our friends over at FanDuel. Look, NBA season, NFL season. You want to get on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers, you can bet $5. You get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is going to give you everything you need. NFL Sunday for the live bets, NBA in-season stuff. Got the in-season awards. It's all in one place. Maybe you get a hunch in the middle of the game. You check out the latest stats. You can get into play-by-play. So much more. Same place where you place all your bets. I love the season-long award ones. You cowards at FanDuel right now. Most improved player. Dennis Schroeder, not even on the list. Now, I don't think you're usually pretty much disqualified when you're 31 years old to be the most improved player in the league. But let's get this going over on FanDuel. there's a bunch of guys here that have improved way less than Dennis Schroeder over the course of this year, and they're not there over on FanDuel right now. You're going to get you're going to get $150 in bonus bets on FanDuel.com when you join today. You have to place that first $5 real money bet. $150 in bonus bets. Place that first $5 real money bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook.
All right, as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about, of course, the Brooklyn Nets beating the Memphis Grizzlies 119-106. I mean, going away in this competition. And also, if I could just say, before we get into Dennis Schroeder and how incredible he's played for this team and some key stats, boy, Ja Morant, he's an easy guy not to really care for. I didn't like anything that was going on there, including just, listen, man, you're a superstar in this league and you're going to start getting chirpy with Keon Johnson. Yeah, you baited him. And he ended up getting 2 techs and getting kicked out of that game. But I liked the energy inside of this game, and we've seen it over the course of the start of this season for this team. I only bring up that moment because you have Ja Morant kind of clapping at the back of Keon Johnson after he picks up that foul right before he gets thrown out, and you have Dorian Finney-Smith. He walks over, clapping, gets in between the players and Keon Johnson. There's a good, like, rallying between young players and veteran players, between experience and kind of these guys that are showing a spark, like Zaire Williams, who we'll talk about in a little bit. So there's just something about the energy and personality of this team that I've really been enjoying. And so it begs the question, Dennis Schroeder, let's get into this here. Here's a guy through these first 5 games that is top 5 in assists in the league, top 10 in 3-point percentage, and also top 30 in scoring. And you may say, like, top 30, is that really that big of a deal? Yeah, it's a massive deal because we came into the season not knowing if anyone else will be able to score with Cam Thomas. Instead, in a game like this, by the way, where the Nets win going away, you had Cam Thomas have a quiet shooting performance. And it was Dennis Schroeder that stepped up and led the way for this team, going off for 11 of 14, 6 of 9 from beyond the arc, 5 of 5 at the line, kicked in 8 assists as well to go with a 33-point performance. It's been nothing short of incredible with what he's been able to do. And I think you have to take a step back for a second and ask the question, which I want us to both give our answer to. What do you do with Dennis Schroeder as this season progresses, with how good he's playing and how meaningful he really is to this team and to some of the young development too?
Well, he's been awesome. Obviously, he's been basically the story of the season for the Nets so far, right? Like, so
Ben Simmons isn't making this happen for the Nets offense.
I got a Ben Simmons quote that's gonna just blow your socks off here later. But
fantastic.
As I say quote, I meant that. I don't know if I said that. So right now, so that's on the high level. Schroeder's been awesome. He's not going to continue to shoot 55, 55, 87, right? Like, those splits are not sustainable. He's not a 55% from 3 shooter. The efficiency is probably going to come down. Some teams are going to start figuring out a little bit what they're doing. The Nets schedule gets a little. They got to play the Heat. They had some more difficult games. They did get bailed out a little bit in this game with Marcus Smart getting hurt and Desmond Bane getting hurt, right? So, like, the two of the best players for the
we didn't have Ben
Grizz
Simmons
are out.
So, you know.
So with Schroeder, it's a situation where I think there was some regression to the mean will come in terms of his overall efficiency. But at the same time, we said 1 or 2 episodes ago, it might be hard to be awful with a guy like him at point guard. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's a push and pull here. When you have young players in the team, it is really important to have a good point guard, because it helps your development. Everyone's like, development. It's hard to develop guys when you don't have good offensive organizers, table setters, all this other stuff.
Right.
So on that level, it's worth it to have him around. I'm still not really concerned about their draft status. In the end, there's so many ways to lose games, from games 60 to 82 or whatever, that you just don't have to worry too much about it. And look, I do think as long as he's playing a lot of minutes, it's going to be hard for them to be terrible. Right. And I think that was the expectation.
Yeah, that's the hard part for me, is just thinking ahead about this and saying, to your point, you don't want to get rid of the only probably player that functions, not only probably, definitely functions in this way for this offense. You can rely on him in a way that we knew you weren't going to be able to rely on a player like Ben Simmons. You don't have a lot of other ball handlers. But the irony is, the thing we always said, well, you start to strip away some of these players and you'll clear them out. But that's because on the top end of it, you thought all these veterans were going to be the reasons that you're winning games, or that you're risking winning games over the course of the season. Dennis Schroeder's been pivotal in that. Cam Johnson's had a couple of nice games, but he hasn't been a critical cog night over night. Dorian Finney-Smith has made some good defensive plays, done some things around the basket. He's been awful from the outside. So you start to go through the list of who's been the key contributors. It's all the guys that aren't going anywhere. It's Zaire Williams. It's Cam Thomas, right? It's even Jalen Wilson coming off the bench. Noah Clowney is still getting himself coming along here. I think that his development is more of a journey, and you were right about that this offseason. Not a knock, just a reality. But those are all guys that are going to be here playing. So I wonder how much you can strip away and still maintain the positivity and still maintain being able to have Schroeder on this roster. Because I agree with you. I don't think, barring a team coming in off the top rope and offering you the world, I don't think you can afford to trade Schroeder, given the fact that if you take him off the court, things probably functionally break down really fast for this roster. Now, that serves the tank agenda, but it also probably does some real damage to Cam Thomas and his development and the way you want these other pieces to function off him. Jalen Wilson might be one of those key pieces as well to go along with some of the bigs. And it's everything that Schroeder's been showing that he can do. There's nobody else on this roster that is going to be able to play to 70% of that if you were to move him to keep the tank intact.
I mean, this in the preseason, we said that if Schroeder gets hurt, the Nets are really up a creek at the guard position. That we acknowledged that much at least. We said if anything happens to him or Cam, the team is really in huge trouble when it comes to being able to score at all. Because we really did see those two as the only two guys, and there's nothing behind them. I mean, he's playing tons of minutes. Keon Johnson's and Shake Milton. Okay, what are we getting here? Like, you know what you're going to get. They're fine, whatever. But he's just so much better than them that if he were to leave, we would see a cratering of the offense, because it would have so many downstream effects. It would affect guys like Claxton, it would affect Ziaire, affect Noah Clowney, everyone that, like, all these bigs need a guy that understands, like, sort of how to get them the ball in optimal spots, right? Yeah. The Nets had one of the best guys ever at this in James Harden for a while, right? Harden was the ultimate at this, at just analyzing, dissecting, waiting, and then waiting for the split second to give you the ball or take the shot himself. And he's a master at it. He's one of the best ever at it, right? Like of running that pick and roll, unlocking bigs, elevating them. Like, we used to joke that if you had two hands and we're moving toward the basket, Harden could get you double-digit points on any given night as a big, right? Like, you could average 15 with him. Schroeder's not that, but it's a version of a guy who understands, like, this piece of how the timing works, how the defenses work. If he were to go, you would see, and we said this from the beginning, there would be, like I said, a cratering of their offense. He's so important to what they do. Maybe they need that, by the way. If you want to tank, it's like funny about where they are.
And that's the reality of it, right? And this is always the hard part for me. We talk about it all the time. The assignment is the assignment. The tank is what we're after here. But when you see, especially in conjunction with the young players developing and looking good, and you see that Dennis Schroeder is the straw that's stirring that drink, it's really hard. Like, it's really hard for me to then say, like, okay, take whatever you can get him off this, get him off the court, get the veterans off the court. Let's have this become a mess. Not because I don't want the ultimate agenda of having a high draft pick, but because in the background, what ends up happening. Now we're going to spend 60 games looking at some young players and starting to get a little bit critical about their performances and how they're developing and whether or not they're good enough to be a part of the next phase of this. So I do suffer from that push and pull. The reality being, I will take what's happening right now because it's a good problem to have. Guess what? You have another high-level playing veteran that'll have Sean Marks need to make decisions at the deadline, make decisions about the roster, and it's far better to be in this position than maybe looking around and saying, our veterans haven't played up to par, and we don't have anything to jettison here, and we're just a muddling team working our way towards that future draft. Coming up here in a second, let's talk about Zaire Williams. Little revenge game for this guy. And yes, he wanted every bit of it. Talk to Vince Carter beforehand to get a little bit of advice about returning to your former team. We'll dive into his performance and wrap things up coming up next. All right, so as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, the win for the Brooklyn Nets, 119-106 over the Memphis Grizzlies. One other thing I want to mention before we actually kind of fold in Zaire Williams to this conversation. Top field goal attempts for the Brooklyn Nets. No surprise that Cam Thomas has 19.8, so almost 20 per game. And he, again, had it was first quiet game of this season against the Memphis Grizzlies. 15 attempts per game for Dennis Schroeder. That's the other part that matters. Cam Johnson, surprisingly, 12. Over 9 for Dorian Finney-Smith. He's shooting a ton of threes. They're not all going down. And then it's Zaire Williams. 7.8 shot attempts per game. Narrowly, though, ahead of a player like Noah Clowney, who is not getting on the court a ton right now, but just when you think about that, not only the footnote on how much we have Schroeder shooting, Zaire Williams is coming off the bench and taking almost 8 shots a game. That volume is only going to increase, especially if he puts together a 3-point performance like he did against the Grizzlies.
It's just such a huge steal. We're at risk. I'm at risk of just being of talking about it too much. Honestly, I had to stop like 4 mid-game tweets about Zaire Williams yesterday because I was like, it's going to look psychotic. You're gonna if you're gonna show my timeline, it's gonna look weird. It's gonna look weird. It's gonna show my timeline. It's gonna be 90% Zaire Williams tweets, and then like one thing about my kids and like one other thing about the Nets, and that's just gonna look weird on an optics level. But this is just how good he's just been. So good. He jumps off the screen. We said it last time, and it just happens again. Watch him when he plays. He has great instincts, like great on-ball defensive instincts. He also has like a really wide stance and can move his feet really quickly. And so when he has that wide stance and he can backpedal really quick to like just cut off your angle, that's why he can guard these guards like Ja and Dame and guys like this in the half court, even pick them up full court. Just watch the feet. Just watch his feet and how far his legs are apart and how balanced he is. That's why, and how quickly he moves to anticipate the next move. It's why he had 4 steals last night in sort of like limited minutes. None of them were like just cheap. Well, one was kind of a cheapie where the Grizz kind of just fell asleep. But in general, he just causes so many problems. And he just, I think, probably not. That's not wrong. Claxton's our best defender. He's the second best defender. And he's so versatile. He's just going to earn more and more playing time. The shooting, fell off a little bit last night, but still 56% from the field. The shot attempts have been pretty consistent.
Yeah,
it's going to look like one of the better. They got a second round pick with him. They gave away nothing and got him back and a second round pick. It's just such a steal. I love watching. He's my favorite net to watch easily.
Well, that's so, it's funny too, just quick correction, because I said a big performance from beyond the arc. That's going back to the Denver game, 4 of 5. He was just 1 of 4 from deep in this game against Memphis, but 6 of 10 from the field overall. And you mentioned it. And he got to the line 5 times, knocked down 4 of those. It's like all these little things that add up to being a really good player and a quality piece to have on your roster. It's not just that you're good defensively. Like, we've done this chapter and verse with different players for the Nets over the years. Oh, good defensive player, but doesn't have a perimeter shot, or can do some things offensively, but God, he's a nightmare at the line. Zaire Williams has all the pieces of being a great complementary player on a roster. His minutes have only increased game over game. Played up to 24 minutes against Memphis, probably intentional from Jordi Fernandez, going back to his former team. Remember in the offseason when he was asked, he said, I felt like I was a caged bird finally set free coming to Brooklyn. And you mentioned the footwork. I think everyone should watch what he's doing on the defensive end. The off-ball defense, because all of those steals, except for the one gimme, as you said, those are him playing the passing lanes. He has his back practically to the on-ball player for the Memphis Grizzlies, and it's just kind of over his shoulder. And because he has the reach and the length, it's like you don't anticipate that he can cover that extra 1.5 feet beyond where his stance currently is. Got into the lane several times from a passing perspective, took it the other way, a lot of easy flushes. Vince Carter called him out for not doing an absolute thunder jam on one of those steals going the other way against his former team. But it was right after that sequence that Ziaire kind of said, whew, I could use a breather. I just picked off like 3 passes in a row. I'm sprinting full court here. Everything about his game, including, by the way, the cherry on top for me, as you mentioned, loving watching him, was the spin move going to the rim for the throwdown in the fourth quarter. It's just, I didn't know that his athletic bar was as high as it was, because he's playing somewhere else and the role isn't great for him there, and he's not getting a ton of usage. And now all of a sudden on a team like this, they're like, great, let's see what you got. And you are just seeing his ceiling significantly increase here. Now back-to-back double-digit scoring performances for a player that, as you say, plus the second-round pick, just to make sure that the pot was sweet enough on that trade.
Because he can leap, like he's a leaper too, and has like fast twitch stuff. He's been running pick and roll with Schroeder too. Like, so yes. Like they use him as a screener.
3 bodies that can go do that.
Have him dive to the basket. And like I think they ran a horn set last game, like where they were able to sort of unlock something. So like he just can do a lot of different stuff. And this is a guy, he's a guy where you're kind of like, man, if they just could just trade DFS, like he should probably start in place of them or something. Right.
Well, I'm gonna tell you right now, if whatever, by whatever metrics Zaire Williams is pushing towards taking over the starting role from Dorian Finney-Smith. I just don't see how you can do it any other way. Now, we know the overarching need and tanking and all that stuff, but he's just playing better, and he's a better player. He's a better complement to what they're doing. It just makes too much sense to start to see him potentially transition into that role because he's knocking down the threes. He's more athletic. He can do more things defensively. Like, the whole package is there to make the right pieces fit together here.
That we talked about as a potential issue for the Nets this season, besides just like the drop off in guard play, was that they were going to really struggle at point of attack defense because they really just didn't have that archetype, right? Like, neither Schroeder or Cam Thomas is like that. Like, you know, if you think point of attack, you're thinking DSJ, guys like this that can really pick up, fight over screens, can handle the primary ball guy, handle the other team's primary on ball guy. Jeez, got there.
He got there. Nice.
And cause problems. Simmons can do this, and so he's a decent complement defensively for those guys. Although he's an absolute total foul box. But Ziaire actually has been picking up these guys too, so it actually helps, right? He ends up being more of a POA defender because and then you can keep those other guys on the court longer, right? Or you just don't have as many problems defensively. So I just really didn't expect him to be that guy, but he can be. Like, he guards other teams' point guards, and the good ones too, not just random dudes like John, Dame, and guys like this. Like, that's who he's guarding, and he looks totally in his element. He just can do it, and seems to relish the assignment too.
Well, that's a part of it too, right? You know, sometimes it's about, do you want to have that identity? And remember, this is a game where you didn't have Ben Simmons from a defensive perspective, and you didn't have Nicholas Claxton, excuse me. You didn't have him in this game. So you have to think about the player's ability to step up. And this is when I go back to the Dorian Finney-Smith piece and the veterans versus the youth. When you look on the court and you say, okay, we don't have player X who can step up. I don't think there's a lot of the veterans that you look at saying, and now do the new thing in your game. No, you're the standard package, whereas Zaire Williams is showcasing that he can do things beyond what expectations maybe would suggest for him. So, me personally, I don't have any issue moving him into the starting rotation, making that type of decision. I know they've stuck to what you said in the offseason. Veterans deserve to get those starting roles and deserve to play. But at some point, you have to serve what's the best functional form for this team. And we all understand the sneaky version of trying to, tank yourself to where you want to get to. And that's where maybe you try to massage some of these egos around deserving to start versus serving the hierarchy of contracts and veteran leadership, et cetera. So it'll be interesting to watch how things unfold these next handful of games, because right now this 2-3 team is too good to get to the tank where we want them to be by the end of this season.
Net rating for Zaire on the season, him and Schroeder are plus. I just closed it. They were way plus too in like 69 minutes. One other interesting stat on the way out the door here: Ben Simmons this year. Here's the two numbers that stand in nice little contrast. Field goal attempts, 17. Fouls, 19. He has 2 more fouls than field goal attempts. It's just what it is. I purposely waited to like the 28-minute mark of this so that we just would easily be able to cut ourselves off on it. But that's all. Do you need to know anything else? He has more fouls than field goal attempts, and he's like your de facto point guard, ball handler when he's in there. It's a joke. It's a joke. He just can't. I don't know. I don't know how any other thing. Do you have any comments about that? That stat is so alarming for a guy who's played almost 100 minutes for this team and is supposed to be XYZ.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is, because Noah Clowney is developing, because Zaire Williams has the ability to do the things we talk about defensively, because you have Nicholas Claxton, guess what? Again, I'm going to go back to the top. Jordi Fernandez, you get to make the right choices for the basketball team and not be concerned about maybe what Ben Simmons represents in theory, right? You've got plenty of length now. You've got defensive versatility. I see no point where you're going to go, oh, if only Ben Simmons was on the court there. There's things that he does defensively. That's great. There's things he does offensively. Schroeder's taking care of the offensive end. You've got 3 different players that are working defensively. I don't need to see Ben Simmons playing minutes for this team. That, even in a tank year, nothing frustrates me more than watching Ben Simmons take the court for the Brooklyn Nets, because it's just night over night, minute over minute frustration where you keep going, what is up with this dude? And not even that, I don't even ask the question, what's up with this dude? I go, I know what's up with this dude. I feel bad for him, whatever he's going through. I just wish that the Nets would stop making me watch it on a night in, night out basis. So good thing you did this at the end, because I wasn't going to be able to.
He took some shots early, and then it just kind of goes away. Like, he just.
And then it fades away. Yes, and then it fades. That's the by the way. it's a good thing you did this at the end, because that's the most frustrating part. First 5 possessions, he goes to the basket twice. You go, oh, okay, let's see how the rest of no, he's done. Not going to do that for the next 38 minutes of this game. It's insane.
Right away, because it was like in their playbook. It's like, where the NFL scripts, you script out the playbook, right, and your first 5 plays. And then it's just like, then he's just foul, and it's over. Okay, we're going to get out of here on that positive note. Make sure that you just look, 2 things. Subscribe to Locked On Nets wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe over on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Nets newsletter as well. Link will be in the show notes, coming at you every single day. Notes about the games, notes from Adam about what's going on, kind of recapping some of the podcast stuff. It's all going to be there. So sign up for the Locked On Nets newsletter.
My mind rebels at stagnation. Give me problems, give me work, give me the most obtuse cryptogram or the most intricate analysis, and I am in my own paper atmosphere. But I abhor the dull routine of existence. I crave for mental exaltation. That is Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
One of the all-time, too many are poets.
Too wordy, yeah, probably too wordy of a poet, but one of the all-time still.
Anything there? I lost interest like 6 words in. Okay, but obviously though, one of the all-time great poets. He'll be missed. We'll be back again tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.